people in Britain 8,000 years ago dug pits 16 feet across and 8 feet deep in alignment stretching up to 500 metres. Explain. Yes, folks, we're going to be talking about, or explaining, holes in the ground. 8,000 years ago. There's not much stuff comes up from 8,000 years ago, is there?
There really isn't, actually.
Anyway, yeah.
No, and from that point of view, I mean, this is a fantastic find. Yes.
The headline reads, archaeologists discover 25 Mesolithic pits in England. The 8,000-year-old pits shed light on a period in Britain that historians know very little about. Don't know about the shedding light bit. Actually, before we launch into this, just a shout out for our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this without you or with other donations from elsewhere. If you feel like joining them, if it's supporting what we do have a look in the description down below, where there's a link to our Patreon page and another interesting project, but I won't witter on about that right now. Anyway.
Yes, but worth mentioning, though, if you're in a shout out to our patrons, bear in mind, if you like the stuff that we do, that there is an absolute mountain of stuff on our Patreon site that is just available to patrons there. There's tons of stuff. So
there's loads of stuff. 400 extra bits that you
is it 400 now?
It's several years bounty.
Well, that's true.
That's done.
That's
anyway.
True. Yeah.
That's done, out of the way with that. Anyway, shall I read this article, which is
from
go on,
read it.
Smithsonian Magazine online. Archaeologists in Bedfordshire, England, have found a cluster of 25 monumental pits. Hello, we're off to the races already.
We are.
What on earth is a monumental pit?
It's just, I think, yes, other adjectives are available. I don't know what a monumental pit is. It seems a bit of a yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I've bogged us down early on.
Do go on.
Monumental pits that date to the Mesolithic era, a time with few clues to suggest what life was like in Britain, according to a statement from the Museum of London Archaeology, henceforth referred to as MOLA. Researchers are calling the find nationally significant, saying that the site holds one of the largest collections of these kinds of pits ever found in Britain. While we know of other large and enigmatic pits dug by hunter-gatherers from elsewhere in Britain, including at Stonehenge, the Bedfordshire pits are striking because of their number and of the wide area they cover. Bedfordshire, the pits have been given a name for the local village, I think.
Linmere.
Linmere, that's right, yeah. And the other pits they refer to, Rupert, at Stonehenge.
Yes, well, Durrington, really, isn't it? I know they mentioned Stonehenge, but, not it's between the two. It's in the Stonehenge landscape, isn't it? The big pits.
But I think that the thing is they found loads recently and they've only excavated a few of them.
Okay. Actually, yes, it's something we don't need to talk about it now. But yes, you're talking about the smaller pits. I'm talking about the colossal pits. There's between the two. There's lots of pits of various sizes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't distract us too much then. Let me say more. Each pit measures up to 5 metres, 16 feet wide, and 1.85 metres, that's 6 feet deep. That's 6 feet deep is a lot. Yeah, the researchers say their creation would have required a lot of work, particularly because groups at this time were nomadic. May have words to say about that later. The pit's alignment, they're situated in straight lines around former stream channels, here's a clue, could indicate that they had some sort of ritual significance. Hold that thought.
Yes.
People were going back to these pits over very, very long periods of time, Pollard tells Roberto Peroni of BBC Three Counties Radio. They became important points in the landscape that people returned to. Inside the pits, the researchers unearthed the remains of wild animals, including aurochs, a species of wild cattle that humans may have eaten, deer, boar, and the weasel-like marten. The team analysed these bones using radiocarbon dating to determine that the pits are roughly 8,000 years old. An initial theory was that the pits functioned as traps, Pollard tells BBC Three Counties Radio. Researchers theorised that groups of hunters could corral animals into the pits to make them easier to kill, but upon further analysis, they concluded that the pits were likely used for spiritual celebrations. Pollard says the team is studying the alignment pattern to determine whether the Mesolithic groups might have come to the pits for major celestial events. We're not at the end of the article yet, but it is now time to say words about some other elements of the reporting here.
Yes, it really is, isn't it? I mean, all due respect, we have a huge amount of respect for Josh Pollard. He's done some fantastic work. I do, though, find it utterly extraordinary that on further reflection, they've decided that it's ritual or for spiritual practices, because everything about them screams hunting. The fact that they're in rows and in proximity to water. If you go to other parts of the world where people use different forms of pits and traps for hunting, that you chase animals across a landscape and drive them into pits. It's not uncommon. And if you know that you've got water sources and water courses, that you know that that's where animals are going to congregate, especially if they're herding animals like... also, they said aurochs that people may have eaten. We know people ate aurochs. I'm not quite sure. That might just be Smithsonian slip of a word or two. But yes, what their further reflection drove them to thinking it was ritual. For us, every detail of that makes it more likely that it was hunting related. It's quite strange.
Yeah, also, fortunately, I mean, it's reinforced in my mind by David Jake's thinking. David Jakes is the archaeologist that's been responsible for excavations at Blickmead, not far from Stonehenge, over the past few years, and brilliant work he has done, not least of which is incorporating elements of the landscape into understanding what people were using the landscape for, and what's particular about the Stonehenge landscape that enabled people to be fruitful, to live there, in what seems to have been quite a fruitful way. It supported their way of life, and one of those things, that's why I was mentioning the Stonehenge pits, because they date from around the time of Blickmead and before the time of Blickmead as we know it. But David Jake's thesis or idea is that those particular water channels, the Stonehenge landscape is largely determined by old water channels. And he saw that in sight of the Mesolithic timber posts, which were discovered in the 1960s when they were making the Stonehenge car park, the old Stonehenge car park, overlooked a particular dried up channel, which was a natural channel through which you could funnel animals. I mean, in brief, the combination of the pits, the posts, and everything around there pointed to a managed landscape by people in the Mesolithic that we would call hunter-gatherers, and this is why I just did a little question mark over the nomadic bit, were at least semi-sedentary, living around that place and utilising the landscape. And this is what this points to, for me, when you've got extensive work taking place in one place for the purpose, it seems unequivocal to us, I think, for the purpose of easing the capture of animals in large quantities that you can depend on suggests to me that these people were actually quite sedentary at this time of year, maybe when the animals were going through. So that they could rest easy. One pit, might yield results, but they were confident that if they dug this number of pits, in my mind, then they could feed themselves for quite a long time. With obviously it's a lot of work, but it's the return on investment is input. So,
but also the fact that they were talking about alignments up to 500 meters long.
Yeah.
Now up to 500 meters long, you can chase animals. If you're chasing them that far across a landscape, then driving them into those pits, they'll be able to drive them into one of the pits along that alignment. If they get past one, keep chasing, you can drive them in. Yes.
And there was another little strange detail, and I think it's in another of the articles, and I don't know if it was picked up on this, but it said that these pits were steep-sided. Some of the images, the photography, it seems to make it seem like they're curved bowl shapes, but it seems they were emphatic to point out that the pits were very straight-sided. And then it says that in actual fact they were
flared at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Yeah. Sorry, animal trap.
Exactly.
What more could you do to stop an animal from being able to jump out or leap out of that? Yeah, flared bottoms, absolutely.
Flared bottoms, even your little pine martens are not going to be able to leap out of that with the...
No, they're not.
Maybe. I don't know. But that's another bit of circumstantial evidence that really points in that direction. So, as I say, upon further reflection, whatever it says, upon further analysis, what further analysis led them to conclude that the pits were most likely for spiritual celebrations?
Yes. Maybe
this
that's
is just
a conversation to have with Josh.
You'll get, if you're new to the channel, you get used to this. Like I say, we have enormous respect for the people that do the work, the people, with the trowels in the ground, and the people with the PhDs and all the rest of it. It's something, but we wouldn't be here without them. We've got to call things out from time to time.
You have, and sometimes the real world practical thinking is not always present. Yes. Not that we want to do anybody a disservice, as you said, but it does seem strange. This screams animal hunting to us. But anyway.
Excavations at the site began in 2019 when Albion Archaeology took on the project for a land development company. Mola took on another section of the site in 2021 for a different development company. Just in case the point needs reinforcing at all, this is another example of great archaeology taking place because there's some development underway. I don't know what it is for this particular. Whether it's I think it's a housing estate actually. If I'm reading between the lines are right, When work began, researchers didn't expect to make such a significant discovery. They say we knew there was archaeology, but didn't initially know we had Mesolithic pits until the radiocarbon dates came back. It's very exciting. Yvonne Wolfram-Murray, a project officer at Mola, tells Dahlia Alberge of The Guardian, there's only a handful of known other sites with pits that are comparable, certainly quantity-wise. Well, fantastic find. But it doesn't... I think there was the subtitle of the articles saying it sheds light on it is like so many of these things without other correlating facts and context. So often these things just pose more and more questions rather than
do you know what I think if we're going to play devil's advocate here, I think where it might shed some light is and you've already touched on it, but where the presumption has always been that the hunter-gatherer lifestyle meant that people were nomadic, and And that is so often not the case, that just because you hunt and you gather as opposed to farm doesn't mean that you can't have found yourself somewhere that you really like to live, and you can exploit the landscape in any direction going out for the day, head north, south, east or west. It doesn't mean that you have to up sticks and move where you're living. So I, as you said earlier on, the fact that they've found, these pits, it's that's not 5 minutes of digging. That's a significant amount of work over a significant amount of landscape.
Yeah.
So I think, that is very indicative of people sticking around, a living area for a long period of time. Yeah.
And providing the food for those people that were doing the work as well, So we're talking about something really quite efficient to be able to produce the surplus. It enables people to take the time to do that. Fascinating stuff. I'm glad of that article. I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. Hope you enjoyed us critiquing it and in our strange ways.
Yes.
That's it, I think, for the time being, Rupert, unless you've got anything else to add.
No. I think the points have been made. And,
very good.
So tune in. There's always more.
Yes, archaeology keeps happening, folks. It seems.
Take care, folks. See you soon.
Bye.